Hello, everybody. So my name is Billy Prempeh. I'm from Paterson, New Jersey. I've lived in Paterson for over 30 years of my life. I'm a United States Air Force veteran, first-generation American. Parents, they migrated to this country from Ghana, West Africa. And, they came here to give me a better life, give me get a better standard of living. They didn't really have much of a positive life back home in Ghana. And, when I came to this country, or when I was raised in this country, when my parents came here, they wanted to do something different. There weren't a lot of opportunities. Growing up, my mother and her relatives, they lost everything that they had shortly after her father passed away. And they were all living in a kitchen probably twice the size of this little area here, right?
Wow.
They cleared out the kitchen, put a bunch of bunk beds in there. It was about 13 people living inside of that room. And my mother, she sold everything that she had, she sold everything that she owned, and she decided to move to the United Kingdom. If you don't know, Ghana was colonized by the English, so it was quite simple to become a citizen.
Wow.
In England. She wanted to bring her older brother. Her older brother punked out. He just wussed out for some reason, didn't want to go over there, and that's okay. So she went over there and just did some of the worst jobs in the world to try and make ends meet. And eventually, she ended up meeting my father. They came to the United States. And I popped out, along with my older brother and little sister, and the rest is history, man.
Wow, man, American dream.
I would say so.
Join the Air Force.
Join the Air Force.
That's awesome.
And even with that, joining the United States Air Force, I decided to do it because at the time I was a big time Barack Obama supporter.
Wow.
big time Barack Obama supporter. I thought he was going to do a lot of great things for this country. My parents coming here and seeing, I never thought we'd ever see an African-American president ever. And here he is, he's on television. And that was at a moment when I was feeling ultra gung-ho American. I said, this is a great thing. And, I wanted to do something bigger than myself. I felt, what's the best thing that I could do to give back to my country? At this point, my father had passed away. Mother was having a very difficult time making ends meet. And I said, I can go to the Air Force because I'm not really getting much of an education here in community college. So I dropped out of there, decided to sign up for the Air Force. Initially wanted to be a Marine, by the way, but they didn't want to take me. They said my score is too high. They didn't.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was ridiculous because I'm like, I want to be infantry. He's like, why do you want to be infantry? You can do something else. Like, why don't you do like admin or something? I don't want to be an admin. So anyway, ended up joining the United States Air Force. I was stationed at RAF Mildenhall, and I worked as a aerospace ground equipment mechanic for about 2 years. I didn't end up finishing my full term while I was in the Air Force, and the reason being is because of how things went when Barack Obama decided to get involved with Libya. So at that time, our base, RAF Mildenhall, we were a support base. We did in-air refueling for our sister base, RAF Lakenheath. They had all the fighter jets. They were, going out, doing the combat thing. We had to go and take care of them. One day, or at least the day when this whole thing kicked off, nobody had any idea we were about to go into Libya until we were already in Libya.
Wow.
In fact, that day, I was at the club on base with one of my sergeants. We were hanging out, had a couple of drinks. I go home, no big deal. Alarms start going off on the base. Jets start going crazy. They're flying off. And it was at that point that it became apparent that this isn't just a job, because it felt like a job the entire time.
Right.
You wear a suit, go to work, do your job, go back, hang out with your friends, and rally all night, And at that point, it became apparent that, something serious is happening. And at that point, I thought that, it's probably the Russians or the Chinese or something. I'm like, who's going to steamroll England, for us to, what's England doing? It's not happening, And we ended up having to go to the squadron building. They come out, they tell us, hey, we're doing 24-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, 7 days a week until mission accomplished. This is orders by the POTUS.
Wow.
We're instilling a humanitarian no-fly zone over Libya. That's how they try to sugarcoat it and make it sound not so bad. And me, like a moron, I actually got in trouble for this. Me, like a moron, decided to raise my drunken hand and say, I don't understand. Why are we going? Because listen, whenever a commander or an officer says something, or tells you something, not just you do it. It's like they say, "Oh, any questions?" It's a trick question. You don't answer the question, and like an idiot, I raise my hand. I'm like, "Well, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Libya is not a threat to the Constitution, the people, or anything like that. Why are we in England getting involved and putting American lives at risk?" And he kind of just cut me off and said, "Listen, either you do that, or you get an Article 15, and that's it." All right.
What is Article 15?
Article 15 is like one of the worst punishments you can get. You can lose rank, you can get arrested, all kinds of stuff can happen to you. It really depends on the severity of what happens. And from that point on, there were a lot of special forces planes that started coming to our base. At the time, the CV-22 Osprey was not many people knew about the plane. I don't know if you know what it looks like, but anyway.
Is that the thing with the like the jets go up and down?
Right.
Yeah, I played Fallout, so they had those
exactly. Exactly. So that was the first time I saw one of those planes, and they weren't from our base; they were from somewhere else. These were all special forces planes special forces units that were going to be using these planes, and the entire time I just couldn't help but think to myself that, man, like people are going to die tonight. And at this point, I was very politically involved, but I would say I was still in a daze or like in a haze as to like what's really, really going on in the world here. And when I saw this, I decided, if I go out and I give this generator to these guys and they go out and do what they have to do, people are going to die. People are going to get hurt. And I didn't really want any parts of that. I disobeyed those orders, ended up getting in trouble. Yeah, I got in trouble for that. But, looking back at it, I don't feel like I did the wrong thing. At the time, Barack Obama made this claim we're going to go into Libya and do this stuff, but he did it when Congress was, when they couldn't come to a conclusion for the debt ceiling. They wanted to raise it in 2010.
It was the shutdown or whatever.
Correct. So it was shut down. People in the military didn't know if they were going to get paid and all kinds of stuff. And something in the back of my mind, and I'm glad, and I was right, in the back of my mind, I felt like this doesn't feel right. Even with Iraq, a lot of people didn't agree with Iraq, but at least George Bush got a declaration of war to go and do what he did, right?
The AUMF.
Right. So I saw that and I'm like, this isn't adding up to me. Now, they're on the base, they're telling us that, don't pay attention to any of the fake news. It's on the television. You can only really get CNN and AFN, the Armed Forces Network, on the base. And the only thing it was really saying was the humanitarian no-fly zone has been successful. It's like no real answers as to what happened. But when I went off base, I went to my girlfriend at the time's house and I started looking at Al Jazeera, Press 24, and all these other news stations. The protests that were happening in Libya were saying the completely different thing than what they were saying in the United States. And the United States are saying, oh, we're doing this humanitarian thing and they're supporting us because they want to help get rid of Gaddafi, when in reality, they're like, we don't need NATO interference. It's like we've got our own revolution going on. This is during the Arab Spring. We've got our own revolution going on. We don't want any American interference. Lo and behold, this happens. Benghazi happens shortly after that. Whoa. You start bombing lands. You start bombing farmlands and all kinds of stuff. It's doing things that, in my opinion, completely violated the Geneva Conventions. So when I saw this, I was like, this is treason. We didn't get any authorization from Congress to do this, and now we're out here killing innocent people. Like, I signed up to defend my country, and I go out and wage these nonsensical wars. And you see what history has laid out. Shortly after that happened, all these terrorist cells, they came together, took over Tripoli. They created ISIS, started funneling oil through Syria, and the rest is history. And now in Africa, and I tell this to a lot of people aren't aware of, is, the reason why I don't support Barack Obama anymore is we have the first black president, and he has done more for slavery than anybody else in history. Because right now in Libya, I'm pretty sure it's still going on right now. In Libya, they have these open air slave markets where they're going around collecting people from my parents' country, Ghana. They're kidnapping people all across the country and selling them off into slavery. And that would have never happened, whether you like Gaddafi or not. It would have never happened if he was still alive. And when I saw those kinds of things, I kind of just wanted to get out. I wanted to go back home, and it was a different story when I came home as well. Because going to England, I got culture shock going over there. I saw how everything was very different. There's cameras all over the place. I'm pretty sure you've been to England before, right?
Oh, yeah. They got the crazy surveillance.
Everywhere, right? Everywhere.
Have you ever seen that meme where it's like George Orwell's old house?
Yeah.
There's a camera next to it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
They had cameras all over the entire place. And I just was like, I understand why we shot these guys and started our own country, man. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to the English over there, all right? I've got English kids. But it's like, I saw this and I just was not vibing with the country. I just wanted to go back to America. And coming back to America, the country was totally different. Before I left, there was a lot of optimism. Everybody was happy. First black president, things are going good. It's all great. But then Occupy Wall Street happened. Everybody's out here protesting. We didn't know what we were going to do with the bailouts. And everyone's for socialism. Everyone's for communism. Everybody's on this whole Marxist train right now, and it just blew my mind. It didn't make much sense to me, because the only thing that kept repeating in my mind is I had a 7th grade teacher in School 18 in Patterson. His name was Mr. Damicolo. Growing up, he grew up in fascist Italy during the times of World War II, and he would tell us these kinds of things about, like, be very mindful and be very careful about these leaders that come in and promise all these kinds of things, and they start drifting the country into socialism. It always sounds like a good idea on paper, but in practice, it never ends well. I remember a lot of kids were just like, haha, that'll never happen in America. Nobody really believed that. And look where we are today.
You promise free stuff to people, they're going to take it.
Oh, yeah, of course. And look at where we are right now. I got sick and tired of seeing this kind of stuff. I really, really got sick and tired of seeing this. And I kind of just kept the back seat and kept a lot of my opinions to myself. At this time, I was very, very big into Ron Paul.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, man. Massively big into
bro.
Ron Paul. And the funniest thing is before I went into the Air Force, this was around late 2008, early 2009. My friend Dan Avery and Rich Eason, they sat me down in front of a Starbucks in Glen Rock, and we're talking about politics. I'm like, oh, yeah, Barack Obama. And these guys are all Ron Paul dudes. And I'm like, do you know about the fractional reserve banking system? Do you know about Austrian economics?
Yeah,
you know
the Fed rabbit hole.
Right. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's like, do you know how money's created? You know, how's Obama going to pay for these kinds of things? And I had no idea. And then, you know, back then it's like flip phones were still kind of the thing. Pulls out his flip phone, and not a flip phone, the chocolate Verizon chocolate phone. He pulls it out. We go on YouTube and we start looking at Ron Paul videos, right? And I'm like, I don't want to watch this old guy. This is just kind of, and this was like before
old
going
Republican guy, dude.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And at that point, I'm like, Republican.
Now you're a Republican.
All day, bro. You know,
wait, real quick. We mentioned you're running in New Jersey's 9th district.
I'm running in the 9th district as a Republican.
Yeah. All right, continue. This is a great intro, by the way.
So,
keep going.
So, you know, we're watching this video about Ron Paul, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this. I don't care about this Obama, you know? And but I always kept it in the back of my mind what they were talking about. But around 2010, when I came back, I started working at JFK Airport, doing the same thing I was doing in the Air Force, but for JFK. And I couldn't even afford an apartment, right? I was making like $28, $29 an hour, really good money, but the tax was just ridiculous. And I ended up living with this guy named Nick in Ozone Park, and it's a whole other story. But this guy here, man, that was the first time I ever encountered a socialist and knew what a socialist was. Like in his house, he had like this massive communist flag hanging on the wall, all kinds of like literature from Lenin and all kinds of stuff. And I was intrigued, I'm not gonna lie, because I've never seen any of this kind of stuff. I'm like, whoa, look at all this Russian stuff, you know what I mean? So we're sitting down, we're talking about this stuff. And it's like, oh man, you should totally be a socialist. Like, you know, we're for free college, we're for free healthcare. You believe in equality, right? And I'm like, yeah, I believe in equality. And he's like, you know what? You should come with me to this rally, right? And it was in a church in Brooklyn, massive church. There's probably about like 200 people inside this church. And there's this guy, he's up there and he's just like, you know, we're gonna fight for the rights, and you know, we're gonna get free college because college is too expensive, rent is expensive. And I'm like, yeah, these are all good ideas. But I remember asking the people next to me, I was like, this is cool, but like, how are we gonna implement this? And he's like, what do you mean how are we gonna implement this, man? We're gonna tax the rich. And I'm like, tax them what? Like how much? Like I don't understand.
And where?
Right. And it's
for
like,
how long?
He's like, they're the 1%. They have the money to pay for this. And I'm like, you do realize these people have like massive jets, right? Like these guys have bank accounts. They can wire their money and disappear. Like there's no way you're going to write unless you're going to write a law to mandate them from not leaving the country or moving their business. And I highly doubt you're going to be able to do that. But no one had a real answer. And it was at that point when I came back from that rally that I went home and I was like, let me look at Ron Paul. And see what Ron Paul's talking about. And like, listen, you know, for the people who don't know about Ron Paul or haven't actually heard from the guy, you see him talking. He's a very, you know, small guy, very kind of boring, which is why I believe he didn't win. And he should have won. Honestly, I think he would have been the greatest president ever.
He would have done nothing. He would have pulled powers back.
Yeah,
Dr. No.
Exactly. You know, he would have been like, I'm not listening to that. I'm not doing that. We gotta bring in the Federal Reserve. He's talking about the gold standard, and I'm like,
no war.
Yeah, and I'm like, and then I thought about it. I'm like, listen, at this point, I already figured out the whole OPEC system and the petrodollar and why we're going to war to get the oil to keep us going and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. It's like bringing the gold back. If you really think about it, every single conflict we've got going on in the United States stems from this fractional reserve banking system. The only reason why we're doing corrupt stuff is to pay all these taxes, to pay off this Fed on the debt that will never pay off, you know? And it really changed my perspective on a lot of things. But obviously I lost a lot of friends. And I was a very, very popular guy growing up, you know? A lot of my opinions towards Obama, I would be very outspoken about this guy. This guy's not for us. He's not for America. And I just kind of sat in the sidelines for a while.
Did you vote for Trump the first time?
3,022%. I voted for Donald Trump. Oh,
right
yeah.
on.
But you know something funny, though, that I will tell, and this surprises a lot of people. My entire life growing up, I hated Donald Trump.
Really?
I hated the guy.
Because I mean, Patterson's, is that New York Metro, basically?
Essentially. I mean, Patterson's about 35 minutes out from
Right.
New York City. But I hated Trump. My father, when he came to this country, man, like my father was so gung-ho American. Like, I understand my language, I just can't speak it, right? He was so adamant, like, no, you have to speak American, you're American. We came here to be Americans, that's that, right? My father loved Donald Trump. He thought he was like, to be an American and like, build the tower and do this. And my father would start all these businesses and do these things to try and benefit his life or whatever, right? And I was like, how do you like this guy? I'm like, he's just pompous. He's got his ego through the roof. He's like, he's dating this girl, then he's dating another woman, and he's, you know what I mean? I'm like,
all
this
these
guy.
Kids.
And he's like, nah, that's the American dream, that guy, And I'm like, no. It wasn't until late 2015, a little bit before he announced that he was running for president, that they were doing this town hall thing. And I can't find the video anymore for the life of me. If you can, that'll be fantastic. But I believe it was MSNBC. It was like a little town hall thing. And they were asking him questions about just his stance on a lot of different things. And they asked him about the war in Iraq. And he was like, the war in Iraq was a mistake. We should have never went into war with Iraq. If anybody really did their research, they'd find out it was the Saudis. Okay, it was the Saudis. Said it straight like that. And I was like, oh my God, he's talking about Saudi Arabia. Like, I never, other than Ron Paul, I never saw another politician straight up call out Saudi Arabia for doing 9/11, because those hijackers were Saudi Arabian. They weren't Iraqi. They weren't a good
amount of them,
right?
And I guess there was some news. I don't know. You'll have to fact check this one, where they allowed the families to sue Saudi Arabia, or there was something going on with
I heard about that. I'm not too clear on that as well too.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm making is, like, we know that about at least 11 of those hijackers were Saudi Arabian. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. He's actually bringing that up. And then I asked him, what's one of the biggest economic problems that are facing the United States? And he said, it's the fractional reserve banking system. It's the federal
Trump
reserve.
said that.
Yes.
Wow.
You cannot find this clip anymore. He said this. I was sitting down. I was watching with my boy Gord. We're watching it in the room. And I'm like, yo, this guy's talking about the Federal Reserve. The only other person I heard talking about this was Ron Paul. So then I said, okay, there may be something to this Trump guy. I
know he's been talking about China forever.
Yeah.
And trade and bring everything back. So this is an intro.
Yeah. I went on a tangent.
No, it was good though. It was an awesome story. I mean, dude, you defied orders you thought were illegal or what?
It's not even a matter of them being legal or illegal, because if the president says it's legal, even if it's wrong, slavery was legal at one point, right? It was more of a moral thing. I didn't feel that it made sense for us to go out and do these atrocities. On top of that, what made me more upset than the fact that we were doing this was the fact that on CNN and AFN, they're saying that, the humanitarian no-fly zone was a success. And then you look at all the other news coverage, and in England, you get access to all kinds of news.
Fake news.
They're talking about the complete opposite. The complete opposite of what's really going on. And I said, they're definitely lying to me. And I always kind of held this facade that it's like, we're fighting for freedom, we're doing the right thing. And I was like, this ain't it.
So now you are running in a D+16. It's like very Democrat district. Yeah. It's the 9th district in North Jersey. Patterson, that city that's where the voter fraud is. That's the big story. That's where you're at.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's your intro. If you guys haven't already, smash the like button. We're going to be talking about a lot of this. I do want to jump over and talk about what's going on with the National Guard in Kenosha now that we've got everybody here.
Okay, cool.
And your opinions on all this stuff with the riots and everything like that. So for everybody that's just tuning in, you can subscribe. We do the show Monday through Friday live. Hit the like button, like I just said. And got a bunch of stories, but that's Billy Prempeh.
I am the guy.
Yeah. Man, I got to say, like, normally we just do a couple minutes for the intro, but your story, talking about the war, Libya, that's rad, bro. I'm impressed that you were willing to say no to something you thought was wrong.
Believe me, I got in a lot of trouble for it.
I know. And that's honorable, bro. Because I see these cops, the governors say, I'm going to issue an edict in violation of the Constitution, and so many of these cops are just like, okay, just go out and do it.
Yep.
Nah, I like the guys, the sheriffs and everything in Virginia who are like, we're not going to enforce these laws. I like the cops who say, if the Constitution says no, you don't do it.
Right.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. If you want to catch the full show, tune in to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, or check us out on iTunes and Spotify, and we will soon have this podcast up for free on all podcast platforms. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next episode.